Rock, paper, scissors. Our new game, Sumo Fight, takes the basic premise and expands it to include a fourth discipline, while adding elements of chronology and dimension. Scissors not only beat paper, they also take place before paper. But how can scissors take place before paper? In rock, paper, scissors, this is the end of the match. But in Sumo Fight, these symbols serve the purpose of rock, paper, scissors, and, well, weight. But the effects of these cards take place on an elevated dojo, which is our game board. Let's take a look at what that means in practice. Both players reveal their card. Player 1, playing as Shoryu, starts off with Hazuoshi, a technique card, the double armpit push. Player 2, playing as Oniguma, selects Tsuki, a strength card, a thrusting shove. Technique is to strength as paper is to rock. But before we get to how that discipline advantage ultimately plays out, we have to focus on chronology, or initiative, and dimension. Technique is second to act of the four disciplines, while strength goes third. This means Hazuoshi takes place first. As we can see in this diagram, Hazuoshi allows player 1 to push his opponent backward one space. Tsuki pushes the opponent backward one space, while turning them 45 degrees. So, we will push back and then pivot 45 degrees. Now we're at the point that the discipline advantage comes into play. Paper versus rock. Player 1 now gets to play one of the two cards remaining in his hand. Let's suppose player 1 plays Tsuppari, a rapid series of thrusting strikes, driving player 2 once again to the brink of defeat. Remember, if you get shoved out of the dojo, you lose. In this instance, that would constitute the end of the round, and both players would discard any cards they had used and draw back up to 3 cards in their hand. But let's rewind. Suppose that instead of Tsuppari, player 1 had opted to play Mitokorozime, triple attack. The result of this tripping technique is to drive the opponent down to the ground, and results in immediate victory. The risk of a card like Mitokorozime is that it only takes effect against strength cards and is vulnerable against quickness cards. So let's go back to the start and pretend that player 1 had led with Mitokorozime and player 2 had gone ahead and played Tsuki again. This match would be over. Mitokorozime only takes effect against strength cards. Tsuki is a strength card. Mitokorozime takes effect first, and right from the tachiai, player 2 is going to be taken down to the ground. Now, let's rewind one more time. Player 1 plays Mitokorozime, while player 2 selects Tsuppari. Mitokorozime takes effect first, but it doesn't have any effect. Wait, we've got to explain something else. Why does Mitokorozime take effect first? Tsuppari is a quickness card. Shouldn't Tsuppari take effect first? The discipline on each sumo action card is one of 3 colors. White background is standard. Yellow is turbo. And red is instantaneous. So while the disciplines take place in a certain order, that order is actually more like this. Red, quickness, technique, strength, and weight, followed by yellow or turbo, quickness, technique, strength, and weight. And finally, white or standard, quickness, technique, strength, and weight. As such, Mitokorozime should take effect first, but while it was decisive against Tsuki, it doesn't have any effect at all against Tsuppari. Therefore, we can just ignore this card for a moment. Now, Tsuppari takes effect. Player 1 is pushed backward one space. But quickness is the pair of scissors to technique's paper, or as we call it, discipline advantage. That means player 2 gets a follow-up card. Let's go with Oshidashi, one of sumo's most common finishing techniques, and push Shoryu back 2 spaces and clean out of the dojo. But since there are 4 disciplines in Sumo Fight, what happens when players play cards that have no discipline advantage versus one another? Say for instance, player 1 goes with Tsuppari, and player 2 goes with Oshidashi. Tsuppari takes effect first, and player 2 is shoved backwards. But then Oshidashi takes effect, pushing player 1 back 2 spaces. That would mark the end of the round. Both players would discard any cards that they've played and draw back up to 3 cards in their hand. Or, suppose both players select cards which should take effect simultaneously. Say both players selected a quickness card with a white background on the quickness symbol. To determine which card would take effect, you would check the discipline proficiency of the square sumo wrestler cards in question. In this case, they both have a proficiency of 3, so neither card would take effect, and we would go on to the next round. If you ever run out of cards, you simply mix up your discards, put them back into your draw pile, and keep playing until one player is shoved out or thrown down. It's so much fun to try to anticipate what your opponent is going to play, or try to catch them off guard by mixing up how you play and going for the less obvious maneuver. This is how the mechanism of rock, paper, scissors translates onto a two-dimensional board in our game, Sumo Fight.